Thank you. Yes, I was going to announce that we're going to record this session on the Fulbright. And I will be introducing, well, I'll say I'm Pat Whitlow with the Nationally Competitive Awards, and I'm fortunate. I think I've met both of the students who are here today, and we have a few more students too who've registered. We hope they'll be able to come. And Emily and I are delighted to welcome today Gill, who is a current Fulbrighter in France, and he's going to talk all about that. So I don't want to steal any of his thunder, but I just want to mention that Ty was a graduate student here at UK in the linguistics program, and that's how I met him when he started working on his Fulbright application for graduate study. And so for the most part, the way this session is going to go, we're going to let Ty talk a lot about what it is like to be a Fulbrighter, what is a day in the life of a graduate student in France, and how the Fulbright community works there. And then we will also, of course, leave time for questions. And since we're a small group so far, I think it's fine if people want to unmute and ask a question, or put that little hand signal up, and or put it in the chat box, however you want to. I think you're open to taking questions throughout, right, Ty, if something comes up? Yeah, so, but we can be casual about that. And then I will talk a little bit about just some Fulbright dates and deadlines after Ty talks to you about his experience, just so you have some of those basics. And then after we conclude, Emily will follow up and send an email with an attachment just with a little more explanation of Fulbright, so that you have some of the basics about how to apply and when to apply and how the process works. And in addition, I can also meet with you individually. So even if we don't answer every question about every possible aspect of Fulbright in this session, please know that we have got you covered, and we will or can do that at a later point. And I guess, Emily, you'll have to progress it to the next, or can I? There we go. So, and we have some more pictures we'll show in a little bit, but we were just, Ty was just telling us about this trip. So I will turn it over to Ty and let him talk about his experience that he's having in France.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Ty. I'm currently a graduate student studying Gallo-Romance linguistics at the University of Lyon 3 in Lyon, France. And yeah, and so this is a picture of me. We were just talking about this. I ended up applying for this program that's like outside of Fulbright as well. It's called Jeune Ambassadeur, so like young ambassadors. And it's basically for international students to be able to get to know the region. So I've done a lot of cool things with them, but this specific, we took a trip up to the Alps, and we had like a day of skiing and a day of luging, which like I've never, well, I'm from the South. So like I'm from Mississippi, so it never snows there. And so it was all completely new to me. And this was a photo from that trip that we took. And we had so much fun. There's probably about 30 of us, all international students from all over the world. And a lot of people learning how to luge for the first time, which if you don't know what a luge is, it's like a toboggan type thing, like a sled. And we would go down the mountain. You'd have like a little escalator that would take you up there. And we would go down. I actually lost my glasses because I didn't know how to use it. So I kept falling the first time. But then I went to the little kiddie side and I practiced a few times. And so that's how I managed to do it. But after that, it was like, honestly, one of the most fun things I've ever done. But to talk about my life as a graduate student, my first semester, I had courses. So I took courses, and it was a lot different than what I'm used to in the United States. So I had in graduate school, you only have about 3 classes a semester. But here I had 7 classes a semester, and they would be at different times every week and in different places every week. So it was kind of chaotic, and the professors wouldn't require you to read anything before class. It was just kind of like come up, show up, and then like you take notes and stuff. A lot different structurally from the United States, but I will say that I still learned a lot. So I don't think there's anything about the education that was necessarily bad. I just thought it was funny when we would have to watch like a video that's like 5 minutes long and write like a paragraph about it, and all my classmates would complain about how much work it was, because I was like, in the US, that's like nothing. That's like baby homework. Um, and so I finished the semester. I got good grades and everything, which was nice. They also grade you really hard in France, and apparently I have like a 17 out of 20, and apparently that's like unheard of. Because even all like the Fulbrighter researchers who have like kids in school, like a 10 is on average. Like you just need a 10 to pass everything out of 20. So that's one thing that really surprised me, because in the United States we like need to have an A or a B, especially for graduate school. But here it's like just as long as you get a 10, like it doesn't matter. Um, yeah, and this semester I haven't been having classes. I had to do a internship, and well, there kind of is like a housing crisis in France right now. So I was not willing to relocate out of Lyon. So I went back to UK and did a virtual internship for about a month, which was really nice, to be able to come back virtually and do some work. But I finished that about a week ago, and I've been working on my thesis that I'm doing right now, which I've been able to go into certain libraries and look at these old documents, looking at language. So I speak dialect of French from the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and so I'm looking at I'm looking at the origins of it, and so I get to go back and look at all this data from like the 19 and 1800s. And so going into these like old libraries that have all of these original books has been like pretty cool. Um, I'm trying to think of anything school wise. Oh, another thing too is like all of your professors will probably come from different schools. So I want to say almost every major university in Lyon, I've had a professor, and I've only had one professor from like my actual university. And I really like it because it kind of expands your horizons, but also like what is out there beyond your university. So one of the libraries that I go to the most is called the Institute of Pierre Gardet, who was a priest who did a lot of linguistic studies in the 18th century. And that's at the Catholic University of Lyon, which I've had several professors at. So I wouldn't have known anything about this institute if I didn't have these professors. Um, so yeah, so that's, are there any questions about the school? I'm trying to think of anything else from the school's perspective. I think you're on mute, Pat.
You would think I have learned to use Zoom by now. Apologies. I wondered if you could talk a little bit, because you had to be accepted to the graduate program in addition to applying for the Fulbright. And
Correct.
so could you just talk a little bit, any student who was interested in graduate study on a Fulbright would have to do the same. You know, you
Right.
apply for the Fulbright is the award, but you apply to graduate school. Could you talk a little bit about applying to an international graduate school, and just that process, and, you know, any other details about that?
Yeah, so I will say first off that Fulbright kind of helped me. So I kind of I kind of knew that I had the Fulbright, I think, before even Pat found out I had a Fulbright, because I got a call early last January from the Fulbright Commission in France, and they were like, "Hey, like you got the Fulbright, but we need to get you accepted into the university." And I feel like they definitely pulled a lot of strings that kind of helped me get in. But basically what I had to do is I had to apply through Campus France, which is their online system for everyone who applies outside of like living in France. And then I had to do an online interview with the people. So Campus France is based in Washington, D.C. And I had to do like an interview with them online just to make sure that I spoke French. Although we did the entire interview, and then at the very end, she's like in French asked me if I spoke French, and I just said yes, and then that was all I had to do. And then other than that, like I would say the hard part is like actually what they call like your inscription, like your registration. They needed like my high school diploma, my bachelor's diploma, my UK's diploma for my master's degree. And I was like, well, if I had a master's degree and a bachelor's, why do I need my high school? And my high school diploma actually got destroyed in a hurricane, so we had to like completely reorder one, which was a big ordeal. But also like Fulbright kind of helped us in a sense of like I need to have this certain certification saying that I speak have like the certain level of French. And Fulbright kind of like waived that for me and waived it with the university, because otherwise to get that certification, you had to pay like $600 for this exam. And because of COVID, they like weren't giving the exam. So it's like, how do you take this exam when you do it? And so Charlotte, who is at Fulbright, she's like basically my go-to at the Fulbright Commission in Paris. She just sent them a nice worded email and they accepted me after that. But other than that, it wasn't too much different than what I would have to do in the United States. I just had to have like a statement purpose telling me like why I wanted to come to the university, and then I had to have a recommendation. And I think all of mine were they said it could be in English or French, but honestly, everyone here accepts stuff written in English, so like that's pretty good.
And I know you have a very high level of French proficiency, but
Hmm.
it is also probably a little different than the French spoken where you are. I just wonder,
Yeah.
in terms of your experience, how did that work? Um,
um, yeah, so well, I would say in my day-to-day life, there hasn't been too many challenges. A lot of people they don't really know where I'm from. They think I'm from like Tahiti or somewhere because they don't recognize. But honestly, like the biggest, I guess, culture shock that I had is I would come and tell people that I'm from like, I just say Louisiana because like hoping that they would at least know Louisiana, not Mississippi. And like they don't even know where Louisiana is. They have like no idea that there's like this French connection or anything. So I think that's pretty ironic. But I would say, yeah, my day to day, not really any problems. But I had this one professor. I took this Gallo Italian linguistics course, and she was from Italy. And she was my very first class, very first day. I was like nervous walking in because I was like, I don't know if I actually speak French. And I walk in, and the whole time she's like, I'm not understanding her. She's not understanding me. We had to get another girl in the class who was like translating for both of us. And so I was like, and she ended up becoming my best friend. But I'm like, I was like, I don't know why she can't understand me, but everyone else can understand me. But every now and then you'll have people that are like, oh, I don't understand what you're saying. But also it's a very French thing to do. Um, like French people will immediately tell you no, or like j'ai pas compris, which is like I don't understand to like almost anything. Like I called my doctor like 2 weeks ago and I told her the problem that I was having with getting an appointment. And she was immediately like, oh, j'ai pas compris. And then it goes on to answer my questions. I'm like, oh, well, so you did understand me because you answered my question. But other than that, I feel like there really hasn't been that many problems. So I will say, like, I know Paris kind of gets a bad rap with French specifically, of like, oh, they'll immediately switch to English if like they see you trying to speak French. But here, people will switch to English because they like want people to practice with. So Lyon's like the second largest city in France, but like people here don't speak as much English as you would expect because it's also like not very touristy. And so like you'll maybe like I'll go to the pharmacy and was speaking the whole time in French to this woman. And then as I was leaving, she was like, thank you. And I was like, well, if I'd known you would speak English, I would have helped you practice. But they always say that in Lyon, they're how do they phrase it? How do I phrase it in English? They're proud of being nothing more than not Parisian.
oh, okay.
So that's like the big thing is like they're very like relaxed and easygoing. Where in Paris they might give you a hard time for not speaking French, but here it's like not a problem.
Well, let me ask one more quick question, and then I will open it up for Emily or Nicholas or Riley to ask questions too. But where is Lyon compared to
Okay,
Paris? I actually don't know.
okay, so Lyon is to the southeast. And it's basically like a good hub location, I think so. So it's basically at the foot of the Alps. I'm about a 2 hour train ride from Geneva, a 2 hour train ride to Paris, about 2 hour train ride to Marseille, which Marseille is like on the very southern coast. And like if I wanted to go to like Turin in Italy, that's about a 3 hour train ride. So it's like right on, so you know the little part of Switzerland that come like jets out, it's like right in that area.
So yeah, so this would be very different in the US where it would take you a lot longer than that to get to most countries unless you're
Oh, yeah,
close to.
so we've been having strikes more recently. Um, And my best friend came from the United States to visit me, and we've been traveling. We've been planning to go to Bordeaux for like 4 years at this point. So we're finally doing it. And all of our trains got canceled. And so we got rebooked on the new trains, and then those trains got canceled. So we're like, we're just desperate because she's only here for the weekend. And so we rented a rental car, but it was electric because everyone here drives not an automatic. And so a lot of times if you want an automatic, it is also electric. Well, it's nice because on like the highways, they have the chargers like at almost every stop. However, sometimes they only have like one charger or whatever. So our 6 hour road trip turned into like 12 hours. And
Oh,
so and so it's very nice because on the train you can get, like, if we were going to go on the train, it would have only taken us 5 hours to get to Bordeaux from Lyon. And that's like one of the most difficult places to go to because there are no direct trains. So you have to go up to Paris and then go from Paris to Bordeaux. But yeah, because of the grevs, that kind of it was an adventure, we'll say, but took a lot longer than we expected.
so some of the challenges of a Fulbright. I
Right.
don't know if any of the students have any specific question, and I would try, I can't get it to move. Emily, maybe you could move it to the next one too. We have some more pictures that Ty sent that you might have questions about. So it looks like you've been able to do a little bit of traveling.
Yes. Yeah, I'll sit here and describe the photos. So the first photo is actually, so I'm the only Fulbright advanced student in Lyon. The other three that we have here, they're Audrey, Claire, and Michael. They are ETAs, so they teach English as well. And yeah, so we all went to this little town, so not too far from us are the Alps. Like you can see Mont Blanc, which is like the tallest mountain in France from Lyon on clear days. And so we went up to this little town, they call it the Venice of the Alps, and it's absolutely gorgeous, but it's where like fondue is from. And so we went to this like little rustic restaurant that you can see like literally all the walls are brick and everything. And we had fondue and it was just amazing. Such a beautiful town. And it's like up in the mountains surrounded by a lake. So we went hiking, just kind of enjoyed the scenery. And that's what we did for that weekend. There's like also a castle there. That was pretty cool. And then the second is at the Vœux de Mairie, which is like the wishes from the mayor. So it's like a big event that the mayor puts on. And so I was one of 10 people that got selected from my program, Jeune Ambassadeur. And so we went and like we listened to the mayor for about like 15 minutes, and then the rest of the night was just like partying and stuff. And so Lyon is famous for what they call tarte praline, which is like this pink little, it's like roasted almonds that are covered in this like pink sugar, and they're very good. And they make these little like pies out of them. And so they have like basically as much as you can eat of those and different finger foods, but they also had different things from across the city. And Lyon is famous for, it's like the gastronomical capital of France, so like tons of good food. And so they just had all that and like all the wine you could drink and like very expensive chocolates they had there, like for you to just get as much as you wanted. So it was very nice. And it was in the Hotel de Ville, which was built pre-Napoleon. So it's like very, as you can see from the picture, it's like very gorgeous and elegant. And I've been to a few events in there and it's just stunning every time I go in. And then the last picture is the picture of Lyon. So Lyon is basically famous because it has two rivers that come together. And so they call that the confluence. And so this is crossing the river of one side called the Saône, and it's overlooking the main basilica, so Notre Dame de Fourvière. And it's really interesting because up there you have a lot of the Roman ruins, but the reason why they built this huge cathedral basilica is because they kept like praying to Mary like for all these different things and to not happen. And like the first thing was the Black Plague in the 1600s, and so like it never came to Lyon. And then during the French-Prussian War, the Prussians never came to Lyon because the Prussians were like burning all the cities. And Lyon is famous for making silk. And so like all the houses were made out of wood and everything. And so it would have like decimated the economy. And so they never got to Lyon. So they built this big cathedral. And so you have like this hill, which is called Fourvière, and they call that the hill that prays. And then you have another hill that's called the Hill That Works, and that was the hill where all the silk makers worked and lived. And so you can kind of see it, and it has breathtaking views. And if you're up there, you can see Mont Blanc, which is like really beautiful.
That's amazing.
So just real quick, I'm guessing your French was fairly proficient coming into Fulbright and coming into this graduate programs.
Right.
So I'm guessing, like, I guess, what was your background before, like, applying and stuff like that, as for your familiarity with the language? I'm assuming that, like, a lot of these, especially with like the graduate programs, like a lot of these kind of opportunities are very more dependent on if you're able to speak the language.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I was fluent in French. So my family from the Mississippi Gulf Coast, we speak a dialect of French, and so it's not like too far off from standard French. I still had to like learn it. So I had in my bachelor's, I had a minor in French, but other than that, it's like haven't really touched it. So that's why I guess I was kind of doubting myself, but more so like the standard French. But I don't think France is one of the countries that requires you to be a French, like, well, I guess for degree wise, like you would obviously need to speak French, but as I've met different people from the Fulbright program, I've met several people who like just don't speak French at all, which is actually surprising to me because I was like, oh, if you're going to come here, you might as well. But it just depends on which grant you're actually applying for. It's like the different levels. So that's actually kind of hard for me to say because I did have that education in French, but also like I grew up speaking French. Now I did have a Spain Fulbright before, and there wasn't a requirement, and Spain actually paid for you to take classes if you like weren't proficient in that language. So you'd have to kind of look around and see what countries you wanted to do. Because I do know that there were several people with Spain that would come and like spoke no language, and once they got there, they started taking classes.
And just to add to that, I know in France, they would like you to have had at least a year. I mean, that's what they say, a year of study and be at novice level. But that can vary, of course, by the type of grant, as Ty says. So if you're going to graduate program and it's in French, you're going to need French. You know what I mean? If you were going to an English speaking graduate program, applying to that, obviously you're going to be fine in English, but then you have the rest of your life to think about. And depending on where you are, there may not be a wide community of English speakers. And part of the mission of Fulbright, in addition to helping Ty finish his graduate degree, is also this cultural exchange, which is why he's been out and attending a lot of these events. And so you have to think about that too. If you have no language ability, how does that impact your ability or willingness to get out in the community? It really varies by country. We've had students go to a variety of Asian countries where they don't require you to speak the language because it's less likely that Americans study those in college, for example. The Spanish-speaking countries are becoming increasingly strict about having you meet at least an intermediate standard. So it really varies across Fulbright, I think. You know, Nicholas, I guess it just depends on like where you wanted to do graduate study and what kind of program, what the language needs would be. And that's where we're going to send you the links to the Fulbright website and everything, and you can look and you'll get a sense quickly of on there. They'll talk about what they request for language proficiency. Yeah, Ty probably had as much language as experience as just about anybody we've had apply for Fulbright because he grew up speaking the language. Other questions? I know, Ty, you went over there. Oh, go ahead, Riley. Sorry.
Sorry. No, that's okay. I was just going to ask, did you know what university you wanted to go to going into applying for Fulbright, or was that something you figured out along the way?
Okay, so this is one of the things that I guess I wasn't too clear on from the Fulbright's like webpage is I definitely, the way I read it is you had to know like which program you were. So I basically, the summer before I applied, I did all my research and I narrowed it down to basically 3 programs. And then after I talked to my different professors here, I basically narrowed it down to one. And so I wrote my application for the university that I'm at now. However, knowing other advanced students in France now, they like just basically wrote their application for like 2 or 3 universities, and then Fulbright helped them apply to either of those and then helped them apply like once they got in. And so I guess there's nothing wrong with that, but it also just helped me a lot knowing like, oh, like how to cater to what program, like why I want this program. Because I ended up choosing my program because it is the only program that I could find like it where we study like all the languages of France. So French isn't the only like Romance language that's spoken in France, and so I wanted to study all of them. And I basically targeted my application as like, this is why I can't do this program in the United States, but also this is why this program is the perfect fit for me and why I would be a perfect fit for it. So I would highly recommend choosing it beforehand, although I know other people have not.
And I'm surprised to hear that, Ty, actually, because my understanding is every applicant I've worked with had a pre-selected program, and that's what they wrote their application to, was that specific program. And the Fulbright sites are fairly well written to that. So it's just interesting, but it shows that there are wrinkles in the process. And once you get a Fulbright, then they're also, they do allow you some flexibility, I think, maybe.
Right. Yeah, because my friend, she actually studies at the Sorbonne. She studies biology or something, like it's something beyond what I can describe. But she just applied for basically with the idea that's what she wanted to study. And then here are like 3 different universities all within Paris that she could attend that have really good programs. And so I guess maybe if you focus on like what city you want to live in, it's a lot better. But I will also say the people in Paris don't receive much more of a grant than I do, even though it's like way more expensive to live there than Lyon. So I would highly recommend not Paris, just because you can like have more money living somewhere that's a lot cheaper. Like my rent right now is like $350 a month, and all of my friends in Paris are paying like 800 a month. So there's like a big discrepancy, and they only get 200 euros more. I don't know if you're interested in just France specifically, but that's also like looking at any of the, like whether you want to live in a big capital city or not.
Could you talk about that a little bit, Ty, just so people know, like, how does the stipend work? What are your obligations to the Fulbright community? How did they do orientation?
Yeah, so our orientation was at the 1st of August, I believe. So I'd already started school at that point, but because like they brought in other people coming in beforehand, they did a little bit later, but they basically, this is what a really good addition to it is, they bought what they call like a carte jeune, so it's like a discount card. And so they bought it for the train system. So every time I can go traveling, I get like really, really good discounts. Like say if normally a trip to Paris is like 50 euros, I can get it for like 25. And so they paid for that because they like pay for us to go to Paris. And so they put us in a really nice hotel. I will say the hotel, you can get a view of the Eiffel Tower. So that's like pretty cool to say that you can do that. And with a stipend, so I basically get 1,300 euros a month, and I get it like every 3 months at a time. And so it honestly has been fine. I did kind of struggle this last, because I literally just got paid like 2 days ago, and beforehand I hadn't gotten paid since like Christmas time. And so at Christmas time I didn't go home, I stayed in France. I was like kind of spent all my money and wasn't budgeting as much as I should, but it's been pretty fine, and I feel like everything is super cheap. So France is really good because with the Social Security, you get like, free visits to the doctor. Well, it's not free, but you get like reimbursed and stuff. And so like me going to the doctor is like $7. And they always like apologize that I have to pay for it. And then like whenever I go get my prescription medicine, they apologize because it's like $2. And I'm just like, no, with insurance in the US, I paid $10 for it. So it's really nice. But they also have a thing called CAF, which it's an acronym that I remember what it stands for, but basically they give you money to pay for your housing. based off like how much you make a month. And so I get, my rent is actually like $490 a month, but because I get like 150, 140 from them every month, I pay like $350. So it's like really nice. And so you get all these extra incentives. Also, as a student, you get like the Metro Pass. I only had to pay $25 a month for it instead of like 65. But yeah, I think that's everything. Yeah, oh, and they also reimburse your flight, so they pay for your flight. And then they gave us $600 up front for the flight. You get 1,200, and I feel like in France and in Spain that's been the same regardless. But then we have to do this final report like a month before we leave, and then that's when we get the other $600 for our other flight. So like as long as you do that little report, you get your money, and it's fine. And also if you ask them if you can get your money a little bit early, like they'll give you your money.
And also, we were talking before everyone came on that Ty has received another smaller award from Fulbright that will allow him to stay through the summer to continue your studies. Is that correct, Ty?
Yeah, so I got the past director of Fulbright France passed away in 2021, and so his wife set up a fund in his name, and so I got $3,000 to basically stay in Europe for the summer and work on a project. And so I proposed my project to travel around the region and do linguistic interviews with different people. And they liked it. And so I got 3,000. And so they're taking me to Paris on the 18th of April and like having a little, like, I guess, photo op session with Madame. So the name of the award is called the Arnaud Rouget de Bouby award. And so I'm meeting Madame Rouget de Bouby. And we're gonna have that. And so like they're paying for my trip to Paris. And then I have to write like a page whenever I'm finished to like give her an update of everything that I'm doing. So I feel like it's pretty nice for $3,000.
Yep. Yes, it sounds wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I guess we can go on to the next slide just to see Emily, and I'll talk briefly, and then Ty, you also feel free to come in if you have other things you want to say, and also the students ask questions. But I just want to get this in. We've been doing Fulbright events this week because this is the start of the new cycle. And so the new Fulbright website became live today. And so the application is open as of today. And there is kind of a fairly long period of time that you have to prepare and do your research. And the way the process works is if you're a student here at UK, you go through your campus. And so we have our deadline September 7th, which is, I believe, a Wednesday. Emily, did you say? And
a Thursday.
A Thursday. And so it's after Labor Day. So you come back to UK, you have a little bit of time. But I strongly encourage people to do their work primarily in the summer because it's too stressful to have to try to write it in 2 weeks when you get back for fall classes. And then we do interviews, and the point of those are to help you have a stronger application. We're not trying to remove anyone from the process. All applications will go forward to Fulbright. And then I have to submit our whole UK cohort on October 10th. So we do the interviews, you go back and revise your application, and then you submit it back to me, I read it again, and then we go forward on October 10th. So that's the timeline, and we will also be sending you that information. And then I think our next slide was, we're going to send you a Fulbright instructions document in the Fulbright website. You can also make an appointment to speak about me with it more specifically. If you're interested in other kinds of awards, you can follow us. But yeah, so I just wanted to spend a little bit of time on Fulbright, but I can talk a lot more specifically about the application if one of you, Riley or Nicholas, if you have more of a question now, or if Ty has a comment about the process. It's if you were applying for an English teaching award, I'll just mention that you need 3 recommenders, but they fill out a form online and there are 4 questions. Whereas if you're applying to the graduate studies program, like Ty had to have 3 recommenders who wrote letters, so that's a slightly different to the process. And Ty had to write a 2-page statement of grant purpose explaining what he wanted to do in his graduate studies and why he was a good fit for that program. And students who are pursuing the teaching award write a one-page statement of grant purpose about why they would be good in that role and what host country they've chosen. And then everyone writes a one-page personal statement. And that's where it's more or less an introduction of yourself and why you'd be a good Fulbrighter, and interesting qualities that you bring and the kinds of things you'd want to do in the host country. But Fulbright is very interested in having Fulbrighters go out and be involved in the host countries where they are, in the communities where they live. So they want you to accomplish your graduate studies or your research, but they also want you to really get to know the place where you are living. Other comments, Emily or Ty, or questions?
Hi, is there one thing that you would have liked to have known before you started the entire application process? And I know you're kind of unique because you applied for the ETA, so you can either go way back and think about before you applied for that or before you applied for this particular award and talk about, is there something that was surprising or some advice that you have to give for students that are applying?
Yeah, I would say how much editing I was actually going to have to do. I didn't realize. And I feel like Pat was a lot nicer with editing, because whenever I applied for my first one, the comments would be like, why did you even put this here? And I'll be like, oh, I don't know, I thought it was useful. But what I did for both of mine is I actually, so say like for the ETA, say if it's one page, I wrote 2 pages and then I went back and like deleted, because basically the whole point is like, you don't want to have too much fluff, but like I feel like just naturally we're taught to like kind of add this extra stuff. So if you get everything you want in like 2 pages, once you go and like edit it and get out all the fluff, you kind of will have like a 1 page, and you'll start to realize like what is more important, what it shouldn't be, and like how to rephrase that. And I did that for both of mine, and to me, I know it works. So that's my little tidbit.
And that's a good strategy. And I would say probably the students who've worked with me before know this, but I will say it, for anybody watching, is yes, you don't need a lot of fluff in a Fulbright. In fact, you want to be pretty concrete and have a pretty strong idea about why you want to be a Fulbrighter and what strengths you bring. And so a lot of us when we look at our writing, we have fairly vague, I love to travel, or I'm really interested in other people, or, and those are all great, but they probably apply to 90% of the population, or at least we would say they do, right? And so you want to be much more specific about, I'm interested in being in this location because of this specific thing, and I want to accomplish this specific goal, or I have a particular place I want to see. I mean, one of the things that Ty talked about in his statement of grant purpose, he had a very specific connection to this region of France. How many great grandmother or something very far back,
6th grade,
came from France to this region of Louisiana, Mississippi, where his family is from. And so he wanted to kind of trace back some of the changes and the history, particularly related to language. And so he had really, really, I think, strong connections to the region where he wanted to be and to the kind of project he wanted to do. Now, not everybody can have that, because you might be applying for a teaching award, so I don't want you to feel, discouraged. My grandmother didn't come from France and therefore I can't apply. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, when you do have that hook, or you do have a strong connection, or you've really thought about it, that I think that can give you a very interesting and strong application.
Yeah, I'll even say, because like when I first applied for my ETA ship in Spain, my little hook was basically whenever I was studying abroad, I was with my host family at the beach, and we were just talking about life and everything. And that was like, I used that as like, a moment of how I need to spend more time in this country,
Yeah, exactly. Having small anecdotes, having, little slices of life, those things can be more interesting to read about in a statement than just, I'm a undergraduate student in the US and I really want to go abroad, right? So allowing people to see a little bit more of what your interests are and what you've done. We will, obviously we'll be talking about Fulbright all spring and recruiting people. You don't have to start your application now, but it's nice if you reach out to me and let me know if you're interested. And sometimes students get hung up on choosing their host country, because there are quite a number of countries that don't require any language ability. And so sometimes it can be hard to choose. Maybe you don't have a specific country in mind. And so sometimes students can get hung on that for a long time. And so maybe I can help you think about what might be the pros and cons of certain region of the world or a certain country, because it is really very helpful to know your host country and then to be able to do some research on that host country, so that when you talk about it, you have some authenticity. And so it's okay if you're proposing a country to which you've never been. It's probably better in a way, or that you know very little about. It's certainly okay to choose that, but you do want to do some research so that you know more when you submit your application than you did initially. And we've had students, if you look at our website, you can see the list of Fulbrighters. We've had Fulbrighters in a lot of different countries around the world. And sometimes there are people like Ty that we know that we can put you in touch with, where you can ask questions or talk about them more. And we also sometimes help students reach out to, maybe we didn't have a Fulbrighter to Vietnam, but we know that some other school did. And Fulbrighters are very generous about sharing their expertise and what their experience was like, and being willing to talk to applicants. So we can sometimes help you make a connection to someone who has been in the host country that you're interested in. So are there any other questions, comments? Ty, I want to thank you so much. It's been wonderful hearing about your experience and seeing some of the pictures. And when you come back to the States, you bring us some of those pink almonds. That sounded wonderful. And,
I will.
Yeah, so we're really excited for you and proud of you, and very happy that you had time to speak to us today. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. And if anyone needs, wants to get in contact with me, you can reach to Pat, and I'm sure she'd give you my information.
Since you have given me permission, I would be happy to do that. And thank you both for coming this lunch hour. I know it's hard for students sometimes to do this in the middle of the day, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.